if they get caught out in a fight in PvP, they're going to get popped. For this PvX category, this video at least, I'm going to take an account of an overall. So what both based on what both of us say, plus what the community thinks as well. So if you all have any input, please vocalize because I want to kind of have a balance of that for this tier
Yeah.
list. So it's going to be like my PvX community
Yeah, my
with.
opinion might change too. So let's jump into the first one. I've got Bard on my list. Honestly, I don't think this is a shock. I think Bard goes S plus immediately.
Bard
It
goes S plus.
yeah, there's it is the jack of all trades, so I never feel like I'm missing something. Um,
Hmm.
we'll kind of go over the categories I talked about. If you're in large scale PvP, people want you because you're going to be buffing your entire party or raid group, which means that, like, if you were going to have two huge raids, it's not necessarily true that the party with the most bards wins, but the party with enough bards to give buffs to everyone is
Hmm.
probably going to win. Those buffs are really strong, especially some of their sagas are like 30% boost to your primary stats. So like your power is like 30% higher. That's really high. Bard buffs are amazing, and so they're gonna do good in large scale PvP. I've seen them do just great in duels, and I think Pockets was talking earlier about once they're out of heals, they're kind of screwed for a little bit. They can run, so they're not as good in duels, but I've seen them be really hard to beat in duels unless you're like a cleric. Yeah, like a cleric is pretty good matchup for a bard.
Well, when it comes to sustain, I would say, well, with mana potentially, I would say, yeah, they would be able to keep their health up longer. It's just that I'm not sure if a cleric has enough burst to be able to kill a bard.
You might
Like,
be right. You
because
actually might be
their
right there.
their first ability, which doubles as a damage and heal, that's maybe like an X 8 second cooldown. So,
Yeah, it's really going to turn down to who
well,
runs out of mana first.
I think well, it depends on the bard's song. So it depends on how
Yeah,
the bard is spec'd, in my opinion. If they were in a 1v1 fight,
yeah.
and I could be completely off track, but I think that's pretty much what I think because clerics they have like what is it? They have like the smite ability. They have judgment, which is good, which could do a lot of damage. They have maybe they could. PvP comes down to gear.
I agree. Yeah,
Yeah,
gear matters, but let's say they're, for the sake of an argument, that they're similarly geared. Um,
everyone's gonna be same gear in this scenario.
yeah. Um, but yeah, let's say they're same gear. If you're high tier, or a decent tier PvP, or if you're decent tier geared, I think the cleric is gonna have, like, if you both have decent gear, the offensive side usually wins. We saw that in the legendary gear. They had to nerf it because you could just kill anyone with auto attacks if you had legendary gear, even if your opponent was wearing legendary armor. All
Huh.
all slots filled. So, that's nerfed down like considerably, but offense still does beat defense in terms of like gear. So if they're similarly geared and you both have gear, you're going to have an easier time killing targets. Like they both become more glass cannon. Um, so I think with decent gear, the bard and cleric kind of even out. The cleric can still totally kill the bard, and the bard, honestly, I think the bard would struggle personally. If you have that ability on the cleric that keeps you from dying, where if you'd hit 0, you just get a heal.
Clerics
One
have a
core
silence as
reason,
well.
yeah, they both have CC, so they're good. They're both really good. So where are you putting Bard on your list for PvX? I talked PV. Oh, I guess I should finish. I talked PvP. We all know because we talked PvE earlier that I rated Bards pretty high.
Clerics have
Bards
a
are great
silence as well. He's saying Bard kills Cleric, and I'm saying
because of
Clerics have a
silence.
silence and a root and a stun.
Yeah, I think Bards. I think Bards might win the fight against Clerics, even if like they both have good CC. They're both instant cast CC, but I've seen Bard do better burst, which Cleric doesn't have a ton of burst. If you have good enough gear, if you're both at like really really good gear, I think it evens out. The Cleric could totally win against the Bard. Um, but if you're just both like adequate gear, I think the class with the better burst is going to win. So I think Bard would win. Not 100% of the time, it matters player who's playing it too, but I think Bard has the edge.
Yeah, I think a Bard could beat a Cleric as well, but not just because a Bard has a silence. I think it's because of how a Bard would. I think it's how a Bard's silence is applied to a character. So a Cleric, you know, the little AoE, the AoE heal that they do on the ground. Well, if you spec, I'm pretty sure when it's you have the damage spec in there, maybe by default, but when you have to be standing on that to be silenced. So if the bard can easily get out of that if they're paying attention. But if they're focused on fighting the cleric and trying to kill them close up, then they have a chance of being silenced. Or if the bard's able to time it and get it under their feet, then they can be silenced. But if a bard is able to just click on a cleric and then silence them, then that's a little bit stronger. I think it would depend on that.
Yeah, but the
Bards
cleric also
also
has the
have
root.
yeah,
You
they
drop
do
the
have a,
root down and the silence, and suddenly they're not moving.
but you have to be standing in it. You have to be standing in it when those abilities end. So if you're a bard, you have mobility, and if you're able to just jump out of that whenever they put it down, you have to, you know what I'm saying? Like the cleric would have to silence you right as you're trying to blink out of the root for you to just not do anything. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah, I
you
think
would
you
have
drop
to,
root first and then silence.
yeah, you would have to, you know what I'm saying? But you would have to catch them off guard, which if they know that that's like, yeah, Bard can break CC. So like if they can just remove the CC from themselves, then they probably can just beat the cleric, if especially if they're able to directly apply a silence to them. The cleric though, they do have a few incapacitates and CCs that they can directly apply. It's just that the silence is not something that's instant that won't apply instantly. Clerics could what is it? The cleric could maybe whittle them down over time. It's just that if it's just relying on defense, there are a few. What is it? The cleric has like a one hot or heal over time that if you take fatal damage while it's active, it just restores a percentage of your health back versus you dying. So I mean stuff like that would be good. It's
Mm-hmm.
just that I don't know. I think the
I
bard would
won't
be
say
able
one automatically wins over the other. I think it does come down to how good you are too. At that point,
yeah, I think it,
you can
but
totally pull it off, but I think the Bard has the edge.
yeah,
I think it does have the edge. Not an unstoppable edge, but I think it has the edge. So
bard, yeah. Well, the cleric depending on how you spec the cleric won't run out of mana either. Just because if you have there's one ability, your first ability, you can have it where if you're doing damage, you'll build up divine power or whatever, and then your heals and abilities will use that instead of mana, and then your blessed weapon when you're auto attacking also helps you get mana back. So like if you're auto attacking them, as long as you're able to continuously auto attack them and you're not running around, then you should be able to do enough damage to them.
Yeah. Okay. So where are you putting? I think I covered
Yeah, I'm putting
every topic except like caravans, which I'm gonna be honest. If you're defending caravans, we're already talking PvP. It doesn't give you any other buffs. I think I might take caravans out of the list because I feel like that's kind of PvP stuff. Like
yeah,
it kind
small
of falls
scale.
under the it's small scale PvP. It's like usually either solos or small scale. So I'll take it out because I don't think it adds anything to the conversation.
Alrighty. What does the community think? What are y'all rating Bard?
Where do we think Bard is?
Right now we got two S pluses, and where's community? Because majority rules.
Well, we had some people that haven't played yet. They were going to be joining here on the 20th.
True.
Yeah, but we still want to hear it.
We'll give y'all a couple seconds.
You also put it in S plus.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Well, Penumbrum, what is it? Penumbra has vocalized that it S plus. So for PvX, we're gonna put Bard for S plus. All right, you want to start Cleric?
Yeah, let's go to Cleric. I think because we had such a debate whether there was a minor edge between Bard and Cleric, Cleric's still S plus. I think it is. I don't think I can take it out of there. I know I was like keep S plus like a holy rank that I don't want to put a ton of things in, and I don't think I will. I think overall Cleric is good in PvP. It's good in PvE. I mean, it was my S plus in PvE. It lacks in mobility, I will say. I don't think that's big enough of an issue to bring it down to an S, though. I think it's still S plus. What's your thoughts?
I'm going to put Cleric at S tier. You have Cleric at S plus.
Mm-hmm.
For PvX, what would the community, rate the Cleric?
For PvX.
For PvX.
This means pretty much everything. How well do they handle the game in general if you're going to do all sorts of content? And I know we have some people that are completely new, but I still want to hear from the people who want to say something.
A plus Cleric.
A plus.
The number put A plus. Okay.
I mean, I could move Cleric down to S, but do I move Cleric down? I think my mind is a little bit changed. I'm gonna move it down to S because I do think Bard excels better at general gameplay, like just kind of do everything. For me to play, I think there's kind of two schools of thought. You have who do you want in your party, and then who do you want to play, right? And I think for the sake of this, most of my opinion is who do you want to play, right? I want more clerics in my party because the more clerics, the less likely of a wipe in either a raid or large scale PvP. Even in small scale dungeon just party size dungeon, 8 people, I still want 2 clerics and 1 bard because the double res means if 1 cleric dies, we're still not going back to the start to go pick him up, right?
Hey,
you can res the other clearing. So
Crypto Juggle made a good point. S plus cleric complete requirement for any PvX party. Facts.
Yeah, he's right. I'm moving back up. That
You
that's
guys
that is
never
facts.
you guys never answered for Bard, but that's fine. So we'll have cleric and Bard at Bard solo things. Our cleric could not. Clerics are certainly important for a party. 2 clerics and 1 Bard is certainly my preference too. All right, then we'll keep it like this.
It's going up to S plus.
Next
Let's
on the
go.
list is Fighter. What are you all thinking about Fighter? Make sure to like and subscribe.
Fighter is my main. I put it in S for PvE. I'm not gonna put it in S for PvX. I don't think it's amazing in PvP. It's decent. But I think it's a big enough drop that I would say that Fighter
Dang.
has the execute, but I'm I'm gonna I would say it's between B and A. It's, I don't I'm kind of still biased and I still want to put it in A, but I think I'd put it at B for PvX.
Gonna put it at
Um
B.
yeah, I think that these two, none of the I still think it's enjoyable in PvP. The execute is really, really nice. When you get a crit and somebody was low and you see that entire bar of health just disappear, that's a lot of fun. Um if you have a healer in PvP, fighter can still be great. If you have a pocket healer, or a couple healers, fighter's one of those really, really good ones. Um so in large scale you know what? It shouldn't be B, should it? It should still be A. It's definitely not. Yeah, I'm
What do
gonna
you
move it to
got?
A.
What you got?
I'm gonna move it to A.
All right, you
It's
got
it's
A.
yeah, it's good enough in larger scale or mid scale PvP. I think it suffers in duels, which is the reason it's losing some points, but I don't think it's enough to push it to B. Yeah.
But
All right, what are you putting fighter on?
so we
You
got.
gave it an A last time, or was it a B?
I gave it at the end. I gave Fighter a B for PVE just
Ah,
because everybody convinced me that it was bad. But because they
see,
made good
you were
points.
playing with an expert fighter, and you didn't realize that all these other fighters are bad. That's what it is.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think people are bad at Fighter.
Yeah,
Like
could
I
be.
think it's
Could be.
solid, but I understand the points that they're making. Like me, I think it would be. I had them originally at an A, so I think they're an A. But I understand where Penumbra comes from because they're a reason why they gave it a they're low and rating it as they're rating it a C. But the reason I understand because one, they may have played with people who weren't situationally aware and ended up taking damage. Because if
Standing
you're
in
a
fire.
fighter,
Yeah.
yeah, you're not, you're standing in the wrong place. Because if you're going to be a melee fighter, you have to be aware of where you have to know the fights. First of all, you have to have gear, and you can't fight in front of the enemy. You got to fight behind them. If you're a fighter, like if you fight in front, you're gonna take damage when they do cleaves and whatnot.
You see a lot of fighters in like a full group, and a lot of people do grinds in full group. Like they'll get like 8 people in a group, and honestly, I noticed that, not to toot our own horn here, but we did considerably
Welcome
better
Wolverine 0312
with
to chat.
XP on grinding when we were just a duo. So like I feel like cleric fighter can be an absolute dream if you know what you're doing, because we were soloing like 3-star mobs that were same level as us or even like 2 levels higher for just a duo, and we were getting more XP per hour because we'd take on 2 or maybe even 3 mobs at a time, with just 2 people. So we were monopolizing all that XP, which normally you would share with a group of 8. And I didn't see a lot of other fighters doing that. So I might be biased as far as like maybe people were just not trying that, but it works. it's a lot. You can do a lot of damage as a fighter. You can totally go in smaller groups and monopolize the XP with your cleric or bard. You know, you do need a healer, but so where did you put it? I know you put it B last time. What's the PvX verdict?
I put fighter at A. The number says AoE is also behind in some cases, plus some dungeon mob spawns are so tight if the fighter evades they aggro more the group wants to have. I mean, I understand that, but if you just it's all about I think it's all about how you as a team approach the fights. So it just could be that how like for your team, fighters are just bad based on how your all team plays, you know? Just because we had fighters in our group and how we would approach fights, we did wonderful. Like we love fighters. So it's like I think it just depends on how you all approach it. Um, but I do understand where a lot of you in the community come from just because it is going to be it is going to be objectively harder for a fighter to not take damage and for healers to keep them alive as well as the tank if you're in tighter areas and whatnot.
Yep.
So I so I know what is it? Crypto gave them an S for PvE, B for PvP, and an A for PvX. So I gave them
I think that was the same thing I would say there. Yeah, I think if it was just PvP, I'd put them in B. So
yeah,
I think the A is about right.
because I can understand why they would be bad in PvP. Just PvE, like solo, I think they did really well in my, especially grouping with like maybe it's just a bias, but I know Ush and I grouped together, and I was a cleric and he was a fighter. I'd keep him alive and do melee damage, and we were duoing a lot of the content just because why not? So
Yeah, we could go into areas that full 8-man parties were going to and just take it a little bit slower. But we were also monopolizing the XP because it was only shared between two people, which and the loot, is nice too because he's magic class on melee class, which meant that we weren't fighting over gear ever either. So it was a dream team.
yeah,
It was good. It's a good matchup. You could do it with a tank too, but you need DPS. Like that would be an excruciating grind for cleric tank only.
healer plus DPS equal no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is fair. That's fair.
Okay, so I think that's enough about the fighter. I think we had a couple agreements on that placement. It's A for PvX. What do we think about Mage for PvX?
Mage.
We put Mage. We really shit on Mage, honestly, and I think some of it was a little unfair.
Hey, don't put you shat on
I'm gonna.
Mage.
Hey, look, your Mage wasn't very high either. I put Mage at A. So it wasn't that bad.
Yeah, I think they were A.
There was a we. We had them in the same slot.
But I just didn't have them S tier.
No, I don't think they're S tier.
My reason for putting Mage A was just like I think how they look visually, they're definitely like a B or a C tier. How they play and how their abilities work well together, I think mages do very well. I think that if you're paying attention to what elements you have of it on the target and you're constantly swapping statuses on them, I think a mage has almost infinite potential.
It has a very high skill ceiling.
Because I added an A plus in there. If I would have had A plus on the last one, I probably would have put a mage at the A plus. I think they're A plus or S. I think they rank higher than a fighter.
I agree. For PvX,
I don't know if they're S tier just because they if they get caught out in a fight in PvP, they're gonna get popped you up.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying. Like if you get hit with all their burst, it's over. And I think that's with any deep mage DPS like that.
Yeah, mage in large scale PvP is amazing. Like if you have, say, you got 10 mages in your 40 man, right?
That's a lot of mages.
Oh, there's not that many classes. That's not out of the question. 10
Yeah, I
mages
know.
is like a slightly higher than average, you know. Uh what is there, 6 classes right now, 40 man. What would the average of that be? Uh 40
I
divided
mean,
by 6,
you have 4 tanks, 4 healers, and
7. Yeah,
then
okay, like 6 to 7 is average. Um so yeah, okay, 10 is a bit high. That's 50% higher than it should be, probably. But say you have 7. Say you have around average, right? And they all drop, I forget what the actual ability is. It's always going to be Blizzard to me. They stand in the area and it all rains down ice and everything. They all do that. The tank yanks a target in with all that AoE going on. Whoever's going to land in that is not going to live very long, you know? So I think Mage can be one of those really, really amazing people to have in your large scale PvP groups. Um, because that AoE size is a lot bigger than a fighter. Fighter is decent AoE, but they're smaller. You know, it's smaller range, so they don't have that same kind of like. Plus, it doesn't slow targets. You know, the Blizzard kind of slows everybody down. So, um, that's just one of their abilities. That's not even their burst. You know, if somebody, the raid leader marks somebody and says nuke that target, you know, a couple pyroblasts charged up, that target's not gonna last. You know, so mage is very good in PvP. I think in large scale. In duels, I don't think it's that good in duels. Um, but yeah, PvX. Where do I want to put them? PvX. I think they had an A in PvE. I think they get a plus for PvP, so I'm gonna put them S. I don't think they're S.
A plus A plus equals S.
Yeah, A plus A plus is S. Yeah, I'll put them S. I was thinking S plus, but I don't know if they. I think that their PvE stuff brings them down a notch, so I think they're S. I think they're S for me.
Okay, as for you, I put them A plus. I think mages are a solid class, man. Like, yeah, they're maybe they may not have like a lot going on visually because it's all based on their element. It just seems to me like it'd be A plus. That's what I'm thinking. I know
I like it.
Penumbra. I know Penumbra put. Well, he said they're the top DPS. Period. I don't know what their ranking would be. All I do know is that when it comes to PVE, they're solid. When it comes to damage, I know that we would have benefited extremely from them being in our groups when we played, which I hope in phase 2 we have a lot more.
If we had a tank. If it was me, you, and a mage, that tanking strat would not work with the fighter. It just
Yeah,
wouldn't.
yeah, yeah. But I'm just saying
But
that
if we
no,
had
no,
a
no.
tank and we were full party, yes, then I absolutely want mage. Like my dream party is tank, 2 clerics, 1 bard, the rest mages. Screw the fighter. Screw the rangers. Get them out of here. That's my dream team. I want a ton of mages. I think that's 3 mages. 3 mages, a bard, fighter, 2 clerics.
Hey,
Hold on. Tank, 2 clerics, bard. Yeah, three mages. 3 mages, 1 fighter. And I only include the fighter because I'm going to play the fighter.
okay.
Uh, would I want a fighter in a dream team if I wasn't playing a fighter? No, I don't think so. I think I'd throw another mage in there. I think I would. I think I'd throw a second mage in there.
Penumbra puts
Yeah.
S puts Bard and Cleric at S.
Not S plus
Oh yeah,
for
dude.
PvX. For
Hey, I
PvX.
put them at PV. I put them at S plus for PVX because I think both of those class. I think you should like they're going to be required.
Yeah, they're completely necessary. And
Yeah,
also, in terms
but
of PvP, there's no one better.
and I
I mean, you
agree,
could
Penumbra.
just
One of each class is needed.
in a party, you need one of each class in a party.
It'd be best so that each of your skills bounce off each other. Ideally, you would want a minimum of one of each. Because each class has some sort of effect unique to
Yeah,
them
I
that
could
would make
see
it
throwing.
easier.
I could see throwing a ranger in just for the armor debuff for the marking targets. Uh, so yeah, I think I'd change my dream team up a little bit. Oh, you know what? Fighter actually does have. No, I still want a fighter. Yeah, you're probably right. I do want one of every class because the fighter has their roar, and so when the tank is taking too much damage, you just drop a roar down, and suddenly the enemies can't deal as much damage and they take more damage. So no. Yeah. Fighter has its perks, and Ranger has its marks. So people, yeah, you mark target, say, all right, fight this one. Ranger hits it, does his mark of the bear or whatever it is, and suddenly melting through its armor. So yeah, you're right. One of every is good,
I agree.
but I
Skills
think
don't
you can
stack.
get
Oh,
away with just a ton of mages. I think you can.
well, hold on. I was going to answer Penumbra's real
Yeah, go
quick.
for it.
So he was saying, or they were saying, skills don't stack. 3 mages can't freeze the target more than once. One thing I want to say to counter that is that may be true, but when we get more spells and more abilities, and once hybridization unlocks, I think that how we look at the skill tree now may change, and we may see more builds where a mage may only focus in on one or two elements. They may not, you know what I'm saying, they may not focus in on the same element, which would allow for, say, 3 mages. They are all spec'd differently. One being more of a fire mage, one being more of a ice mage, and one being more of a lightning mage. They would be able to bounce off each other because they spent their points on one more on one side than the other. So it just, I think that may be something that we need to look at once the game comes out more and we have more to look at. But I do agree with you that right now, how things are, it kind of limits what you can and cannot do with class combinations. Just because I
Yeah.
do agree that some of these abilities don't stack, it would just
See,
prolong, say, some of the effects. So it's like if you have a fire mage and they're all casting fireball, like it won't stack, but you'll be able to keep up potentially keep the fire status up longer and the ice status up longer, as well as the volatility status up longer, so that then when other classes go in and attack, they're able to benefit from those additional status effects. So
yeah, they don't stack, but I believe volatile has a max duration of like 20 seconds, but you reasonably can't actually achieve that max duration yourself to keep it up full all the time. So having 2 mages actually, while it's not adding additional stacks, is going to make sure that condition is going to last pretty much the entire fight. Whereas if you're only having 1 mage, no target is going to be frozen indefinitely. No target is going. Well, you might have a target that's burning indefinitely because burning is really easy to trigger as a mage. But frozen, I think, yeah, you're right. It's not gonna stack, and the duration is like negligible. But yeah, the volatile one I think is important. Um, So like maybe if you have more multiple mages, you both pick volatile on your weapon combo finishers, and then you elemental empowerment on other stats. So that your weapon combos are keeping volatile up, and you don't have to think about it for your actual rotation, and you can focus on frost and fire. So there's strategies, and a lot of times whenever you have that kind of thing going on, even if you had multiple people in the party, unless you guys are in a call timing somebody conflagrating your burn or shattering somebody else shattering on your ice, because while mages do lightning damage, I believe anyone with a wand can do lightning damage. No, that's not true.
the
Yeah,
world
no, I
may
think
never
it's true.
know.
Yeah, I think it is true. Yeah. I'm pretty sure if you're wand spec, you can just change the element of it. So correct me if I'm wrong.
in the chat. You hear that? Correct him. Correct him if he's wrong after this. Make sure you like and subscribe.
Yeah.
All right. Penumbra said their dream team is 2 clerics, 1 bard, 1 tank, 2 mages, 2 rangers. All right.
I like it.
I like that as well.
Yeah. I feel like the battle cry can be really good if the party's about to wipe.
All right, so next on the list is Ranger. So where are we putting Ranger, you guys?
For PvX. Honestly, for me,
Part of me wishes I would have played
Rangers.
Ranger more, but
Can I add a C?
yeah, you just hit the gear.
Just a gear here.
Yeah, you hit the gear, and then you should be able to add a row below or above.
Add a row below, which is C.
Ranger is S. So Penumbra says Ranger is S. If you're in the community and you agree,
ha.
+1 that. +1 that.
All right, we'll see the +1s. I'd like to hear what people say about it, but
if we're wrong in the comments, please post that. The
Ranger's
lowest is
S
Ranger A+.
You know, I have seen. Okay, there is a argument to be made for Ranger because we're talking PvX.
Yeah.
And there's a category that really doesn't get brought up, and that is gathering. Right? There is actual perks to pick a class with mobility that is outside combat mobility. If you're a gatherer, right? So Ranger kind of checks that box. You're going to be able to get to areas that are harder to get to than other classes because they have that leap. There's some areas that you just can't get to. Like even with the fighter's leap strike, where you basically got your heroic leap and land, it does not scale on terrain. So it's really hard. You can't glitch into areas or get into areas that are supposed to be inaccessible. And Ranger can get in those easily. Ranger getting on rooftops, done, no problem. Ranger getting over an edge of a cliff that you'd have to go a long way around for, no problem. Ranger's got that. So I think Ranger does get points for being a good at gathering because they can get to places that are harder to get to for other classes.
All right, so on my end, Penumbra says Ranger's S A+ to S, and then Crypto says Ranger is B. So how are we gonna end this discrepancy in the community?
S is really high in my opinion for all kinds of content. Somebody was making an argument that Rangers are really good in PvP, and I would agree in duels, except if you're dealing with like a bard or a cleric. And I think if you need to alienate certain classes, then it's not all as good as you would expect in PvP. Maybe it can handle most of the classes pretty well, but if it is just incapable of dealing with kind of our two leaders over here, Bard and Cleric, and maybe it can. I have not seen it do well against those two. So I would never give it an S+ for combat or for PvP. And so I think if you don't give it an S+ in one category, it's hard to give it an S for a joint category. My PvE ranking for Rangers pretty low. I think yours was too. You were like C for Ranger, right? Was it a C?
If you be the Ranger, then you see the fighter. And then Crypto said if you consider gathering, I'd buff it to an A. Because that is a good point.
Yeah, I would consider it an A, I think I'd put him at A. Yeah. They have the mobility that gets them in places that
Penumbra is saying their Rangers are better at solo than our fighters. And then in our case, our fighters were better at soloing than our Rangers.
It depends what content you're doing too. Because like if you're bringing on one target and you're sniping it down before it gets to you, Ranger's good. But if you're talking about XP grind, if you're talking about pulling like 13 enemies at once and not caring and killing them all before you're dead because you have a crazy heal, fighter is goated. It can totally solo content that you would absolutely die as a ranger with. You just, I mean, I've seen people try to pull the pulls I was pulling with fighter, and they just can't do it. So I think, but I think you have a point. I think it does get an A for me. It's that's a huge jump from what I put it in before. No, it wasn't. I put B. I put Rangers at B last time. I didn't even have a C for my last rating. So yeah, I will give it an A. I think that's a fair. I think that's a fair assessment. An A is good. A is not bad at all.
I'm gonna say that he's there. Penumbra's a bard, but I'm gonna say I agree. I think we're both a little biased because like we may have had like not necessarily bad Rangers, but we had Rangers who may not have been as good as the Rangers you were blessed to have been playing with. And I think
honest,
that our fighters, may be better than the fighters that like y'all are playing with, just because like, I mean, because that's all everyone's coming from. Like, Penumbra's like, yo, my Rangers slap, and we're like, yo, well, our Rangers couldn't find their way out of a wet bag. You know what I'm saying?
To be perfectly fair, I think Penumbra's right.
We bumping Ranger up to A plus,
but we're bumping Ranger. I don't think I can give it an S, but I think we'll say A plus for Ranger. I'll say.
All right.
All right. I have Tank next on my list here.
All right. Last but not least is Tank. Yeah. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
All right.
And I'm saying for all forms of content, I think I gave it last time for PvE an A because it only has one job and it does it. There's no class that does it better than itself, right? As it should. But it needs a lot of work. I don't think you could ever say that it is still a completely necessary class. The fact that there are not enough tanks on our server, we were constantly missing tanks, tells me that people maybe don't like it as much. So I think it needs some tweaking. In PvP, some people made some great arguments that it is a really, really good PvP, especially in large group PvP, because the thing that makes your group get a kill is that grapple. Suddenly you're just your entire party's staying close together, AoEing everything that's on themselves to protect themselves, and you got a grapple, boom, you bring in an enemy, he's dead, he's gone.
Yeah.
So Tank is a really, really important class in PvP, and it's a very, very important class in PvE. Like, you need them, right? There's not that many of them on our server, which suggests that they need work because people are not enjoying it as much. So I can't give it an S plus, even though I think it's a very good class because it is necessary and it fulfills its roles. But I think I gotta give it more than the A I gave it before because its rating in PvP. It's good. It's very good. So I'm gonna give it an S. This is a very lopsided on the upper tier list for me. I don't have anything that's rated very low because I think when you include all forms of content, things start to move up because they balance out a little bit.
I put a Tank as S tier when it comes to PvX for the fact that when it comes, like, it may not be the best for solo leveling, but when it comes to all forms of group content and in like when it comes to all forms of content in the game, the Tank is important. It shines, and you're going to need it regardless of how you feel, because whenever you're starting to get into late game dungeons and you start getting to raids, world bosses, or just sieges, caravans, anything like that, you need that. Like, yeah, fighter is cool because they can do damage, and Penumbra made up a good point there that there are not enough tanks in their guild as well. Though they fixed it, it's not that they're not. It's not that they're not fun. Although that may be the case, a lot of individuals lean towards DPS, and I believe that is because one, DPS is, if you had to pick, it's like DPS do big number equal fun. You know what I'm saying? You're just killing everything. You just don't have to think. It's brain dead. You get in the game and you can just be like bang 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 bang. You just kill, have fun, do whatever. Like if you're playing a ranger, you're doing flips. If you're doing a mage, you're blinking around, teleporting. If you're a rogue, not a rogue. Well, when you're a rogue, you're gonna be going shadows, shadow assassinating people, like the bards sliding in. Everyone has like their own thing. Whereas like if you're a tank, the only thing is you're gonna be like, well, I gotta stand in front of the mob. I gotta pull them. Your gameplay loop's the same. You pull them, you stand in front of them, you hit them a little bit. You're not necessarily doing a big number. You're doing small. You're doing many small numbers. You might occasionally do a big number, but your job isn't to do big numbers all the time. And it's also more difficult. And if you're playing a tank, your team has to be good. Which, if don't want to play, like if you don't want to play in a group, you you probably don't want to play tank, because tank, you're almost at a certain level, you're going to be required to play in a group because
Yeah,
everyone was going to want you.
if you're gonna solo, I would never pick tank.
Yeah, and then it's
Yeah.
like you have to have good gear. You have to have a good team, because if your healer don't heal you, you die. If your DPS don't do DPS, you die. If they don't interrupt after you've done all your interrupt, you know what I'm saying? Like if you're only one interrupting, you're gonna die. So it's just like people don't want to be up there, literally holding the team on the back, making sure this big old boss don't go over there and smack him in the face. And it just takes one DPS to be like, I fell off the edge and aggroed all the mobs. And then look, you're
Yeah,
dead. You have to
yeah.
taunt them, and then you're dead.
That
So,
is, you make a really good point there too, because there is something that could deduct points from tank, and it is that tank is always going to use heavy armor, and they are always going to, well, not always, they're most likely going to die first in a party, which means that they're more costly to play. You're going to do armor repairs, which can add up quite a bit. Like I've had
yeah.
armor repairs on medium armor that cost me almost 50 silver, which is half a gold. Dude, gold is not easy to get unless you're running caravans. And if you're doing that as a, you know, that takes time out of your day. Getting that caravan and 50 silver every once in a while, like it doesn't sound like a lot unless you've played. 50 silver is a lot. Until you've like, unless you master the market and you're like buying and selling, which they're going to have some new features come phase 2, December 20th, for buying and selling, so people can actually just sit in, you know, the city and actually monopolize the market and do some good stuff. Not an auction house, but kind of close. So
Player market.
there'll be some, yeah, player market is going to give people uh easier access to money if you're good at watching markets and being like an economist, right? So you may not struggle if that's your niche, but if you have to run caravans, that's a lot of time out of your day, because usually a caravan run, if you're going to run effective route, you get more gold the farther you go. So most of your time, your route is going to take 45 minutes to an hour. And there's a chance you won't make it there because you could get attacked. So, and that's, those are, in addition to that, you had to grind the glint to invest in your caravan as well. So it's more than 45 minutes. It's your grind time or whatever that took to fill up your caravan, and then, your caravan run itself, which could maybe not pay off. You could be poor for a while, but 50 silver is it a considerable amount if you're that's with medium armor. So imagine heavy armor, I don't know how much they're paying, but it's a lot.
I do want to bring this up real quick. Penumbra, so Crypto and Penumbra both gave a little remark. So Crypto stated, tanks are always the most wanted role. Need more tanks in every game. That's true. And then Penumbra was saying that tanks and healers are the high stress points. You failed because one of them, most likely. DPS are more forgivable, unless the DPS are pulling things that they shouldn't be pulling and getting everybody killed because they overwhelmed what the team could, in my opinion, could handle. And then the last thing was they said no, tanks won't always wear heavy armor. Light armor has better resist to magic. If you're in a dungeon of magic damage dealers, you need light armor. So I think that is a good point, that
is true.
Managing what type of gear you're going to be wearing when you are in a dungeon should matter. But I think that also will go into effect whenever there are. I think you should mix and match armor. I think we were talking about that a little bit earlier. But I think having if a tank wore 5 heavy armor, 3 light armor, then they might be able to get a decent amount of resistances just from wearing that amount of magic armor that they're able to min-max between heavy and armor. Not saying that there wouldn't be a case where they would need to wear a full set of armor. And guilds chip in for tank repairs 100%. I think that is good for an organized group to do that. That way, because if you all are truly operating as a unit and you all are going from place to place and taking objectives that way, that is the point of a guild, is to be organized in that manner. I think that is good because the tank is offering a service to the group, and if other members of that group are able to make money to then pay for that service, I think that is good. Tanks will need several sets of armor. Also, a downside for tanks, yes, that is a thing. They will need multiple sets of armor because they're going to be different. They're going to need fire damage. They're going to need ice damage, lightning damage, everything. They're going to be one of the most expensive classes to play. But I think that is why they're the most beneficial. All right, we're gonna do Rogue. We're gonna do Rogue. We've been we've been we've been on here for 3 hours. This portion was 1 hour and 12 minutes. And real quick, before we in this Rogue, I wanted to keep going real quick. Rogue, most definitely. I'm gonna go with Penumbra, A+ Rogue, S Summoner, S Summoner. That's what we're doing right here.
Oh, you're doing the Rogue dirty. I hope Rogue's great. Honestly, I hope Rogue is a lot of fun. I think it will be. If they're going to release it new, people are going to be really hyped about it. And I think it's better for them to overbuild it, make it a little bit better starting off, and then bring it back. Because if it's hyped up, right?
Yeah.
Excuse me. If it's hyped up and everybody joins in and plays it and then finds out no one likes it,
that would be bad.
That's not good for the game. Not good for the game. Not good for new players, because there'll be new players coming in. Any new class should be good before they start doing the balance. So I hope that Rogue is S+ right away. And then I hope they bring every class to S+. But I hope it's high early on so that it doesn't lose any PR for the game, because we all hope that Ashes is going to be the best MMO in the world eventually.
Yeah. Well, before we end the tier list section, I'm gonna say Penumbra is over here saying Glass Cannon, Rogue will be squishy melee, Ranger still better, Rogue will burst good, better than Fighter. Any last take? Any rebuttals to that, Ush?
I think he's right. Honestly, I think it will be I think it will be squishy, but you have a melee with a invisibility, something that can eliminate threat, just like a ranger. Just because it's a glass cannon doesn't mean it's bad. You know, it's going to be able to drop its own threat, which means it doesn't need to heal as much. Of course, that makes it hard for it to solo fights, but we want to see high burst rogues, in my opinion. I hope it has higher burst than the fighter. I do.
I just thought a little something. Now,
Yeah.
hear me out. You imagine you have a rogue and a ranger in a party. They're both invisible. Ranger pops stealth first and just unloads all the snipe shot, and you're like, hey, let me get that rogue over there. Let me get that ranger over there. And you run over there. You're like, let's get him. And next thing you know, the rogue pops stealth. Boom. Got you.
Yeah. No,
I think that'll be a good wombo combo.
Or imagine, say something crazy here, 5 rogues.
I don't know how that worked. A team of rogues would be interesting.
Man. Team of rogues is gonna be a nightmare for streamers. It's gonna be bad.
Yeah. that stream sniping. All right.
I remember there was this.
Hold on real quick. I'm gonna do this. We ending it. We out. We out. We out.